All right, good morning. We are going to go ahead and get started right on time. This session is being recorded, so if you do come in late or miss a minute or two of the start, we'll have the entire recording available for you at the end. But welcome to Citrix Synergy, So You Miss Synergy 2019. We've been doing these for quite a while now. Some call it So You Miss Synergy, some say, hey, I drank too much during Synergy and I don't remember what I saw. So this presentation should give you a good refresher on what we at NSS360 saw at Synergy, found interesting, wanted to share with our customers, and to review. So presenters, myself, Matt Barron, Principal Architect, EUC. We also have Troy Couch, Enterprise Architect, Dave Maynard, Enterprise Architect, Dan Costello, Solutions Architect, and John Villa, Senior Consultant. What we will cover today. First, we're going to go ahead and review the technical keynote and review what we saw during that keynote and what we liked. Next will be Citrix product updates, both on-premises and cloud products. And finally, we're going to go through an Expo Hall tour. So if you did miss any of the Expo Hall, we will bring some of our key vendors to you. But first, how do I stay up to date with all this rapidly changing content? Anybody who's familiar with Citrix, especially within the last 18 to 24 months, things are changing very quickly. What was once potentially only an on-premises product is now cloud-enabled, or vice versa, more specifically vice versa. Screenshot this slide. It will be in the recording, but you can go ahead and screenshot this. We as a team at NSS360 are trying to do a very good job in the last few months of making this information more available, more current, more known very quickly. How do you follow that? Well, we have our blog at nss360.com. We also have our Facebook and LinkedIn. We're very active on Twitter, so the NSS360 account, Al Solorzano, Troy Couch, Brian Zanoli, very active. Myself, not as active, but getting there. And then you have Dave Maynard as well. So I've listed some Twitter handles there, usually bringing you content from conferences, where we're at, what we're seeing, what we're doing. Al and I were just at a Microsoft event, did some tweeting up there, shared some information about that new product, etc. We also have our CUGCs. I think Dan's going to review a little bit more on the specifics of the CUGCs towards the end of this broadcast, but we do have 2 CUGCs coming up, and we are doing those very frequently. They are hosted by our own employees. So the Los Angeles is hosted by Mike Streets, San Diego hosted by Dan Costello. So the Citrix Synergy 2019 technical keynote. What we saw that we found most interesting, I think first and foremost, Citrix Workspace Intelligence. This is the new product that is really making Workspace smart. There was an acquisition of a company called Safo that Citrix is using to build a workflow and access control module to help enhance that secure perimeter and bring better user experience into the fold. I think there's going to be a ton of success around Citrix Workspace. I think it also probably extends past just virtual apps and desktops users, but into users in the organization who maybe aren't virtual apps and desktops users, but could still benefit from that technology. Citrix Cloud Services, they're improving and expanding. What many of us saw last year at Citrix Synergy was an a cloud-only offering for a lot of these things. And essentially what they're doing now is they are now expanding that to on-premises, bringing things like analytics on-premises. Huge win for everybody who's still a perpetual virtual apps and desktops customer. Citrix and Microsoft, probably one of the cornerstones of the entire conference. Citrix and Microsoft, their relationship is as strong as ever. It's getting stronger. Between managed desktops on Azure and the Citrix support for the WVD program, which I'm sure there's a lot of buzz around. People are hearing about WVD, multi-user Windows 10. These are things that Citrix is fully on board with, and there's a lot of collaboration. Same goes for Endpoint Management with Intune. Endpoint Management, formerly known as Zen Mobile, integrating with Intune even deeper for more granular control over Word, PowerPoint, Outlook on mobile. Citrix continuing to expand their cloud partnerships, ADC with high availability in Google Cloud, and MCS on Google Cloud Platform. So that's huge for any customers who are looking towards or are in GCP. A lot of support coming there. And Citrix SD-WAN. So there's Azure support for SD-WAN and GCP. There's also this concept of optimizing Office 365 with HDX connections, which we'll get into, but really providing better performance for those users who are in remote offices and using Office 365. And if any of these things interest you and we didn't cover it, you're able to watch that keynote live at live.citrixsynergy.com. I think you just throw your email up there, and you can watch the entire keynote. You could, scrub the video and get to where you need to go. But that's really the keynote overview. We're going to dig in depth more so. I believe Dave is our next speaker, and I think he's really going to dig into some of these technology concepts.
Great. Thanks, Matt. This is Dave Maynard. Let me see if I can get to the next slide here. Perfect. So I'm going to talk about Citrix Workspace Intelligence, and that was announced at Synergy this year. And over the years, Citrix has really tried to be ahead of the game and do a great job about integrating Citrix-delivered applications and services with all the other applications and services you use in your organization. So they had an integration with SharePoint a long time ago. They had their own portal tool many years ago. And so they've always had this vision, and I think they've been a little ahead of the game, and maybe it wasn't ready for prime time, or this looks really interesting to me. So, so I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. I tried to log into Citrix Cloud and see if I could get access, but no such luck yet. So they're expecting general availability by the end of the year, end of this year, 2019. So hopefully we'll get some technical previews going and find out a little bit more about how it actually works. But what it does is it uses kind of a combination of a Facebook-like feed that tries to figure out what are the services or the things that I need access to based on micro applications or micro apps as they call them. So they have a micro app for every action that would be useful to you. So if I need to approve an expense report, that's a single micro app with one function, just approve or deny. So you can build very targeted actions for people, and then the intelligence is going to try to figure out, based on your role and what you've worked on, what needs to bubble up to the top of your priority list, so you have kind of a single pane of glass to do all your work in. So it's more of an evolution of the current Citrix Workspace product that you folks might be using already, which was an evolution of Storefront, which combines Storefront and ShareFile and Universal Search all together. So this is a little screenshot of what it looks like. So you have all your familiar Citrix Workspace items on the left-hand side. You have your activity, and this is kind of your intelligent feed in the middle. And then you have some additional recommended actions and recent applications here. We can look at one example of an expense report approval. So if this pops up in your feed, you can just quickly see it. This is integrated with SAP Concur. And so this just pops up, and if you approve it, you can click approve or send it back to the submitter. We have some other cool features as well. They've written a virtual assistant that can kind of respond to natural language queries and bring you information. So we'll see how that works in practicality. I'm excited to get my hands on that and see what we can do with that. And then they still have their universal search that they have today. So when you search for anything here, it's going to search across Citrix published apps, Citrix files, formerly known as ShareFile, or desktops, and all the things that Workspace brings together it can search for here. So we will pass it on to Troy for the next slide.
Thanks, Dave. All right, I'll go ahead and get things going here. So essentially just going to expand a little bit about the Citrix and Microsoft relationship that they discussed more along the keynote and what they were talking about during the conference. So one of the big things is really this managed desktops on Azure. It's really their push on trying to create a turnkey service that also allows you some customization as well. So you can see some basics around your limited release now, and you're going to have it globally available by the end of this year. Essentially, the way they're touting it is really to get you that greater agility and responsiveness. So you need a desktop, you turn it on. Reducing maintenance, obviously, if this is now a service, you're going to be turning over a lot of that maintenance and administration tasks on the bottom end of patches and updates over to Citrix and Microsoft. Now, the one nice thing is that you can actually do your own installs of apps on the image, and you can use that as a new template for deployment as well. A couple other tie-ins they're working is to really integrate SD-WAN into this solution. So that helps with connections from customer data centers back to Azure for maybe back-end connectivity, as well as you got the Citrix Gateway service, which would be leveraged for the secure access for all of this. So again, it's really just an expansion of that relationship, and now it's turned into an actual Citrix managed service running on Azure for that base desktop you run. kind of looking at the next part, when we get into their overall support, this is really where you get into Windows Virtual Desktop. So the whole WVD that Matt was alluding to earlier. You now have a new Windows multi-session experience on Windows 10, which now you can have that base desktop OS but have multiple users use it, which if you have some application limitations might provide a better platform for you. They're also allowing you now to run a Windows 7 extended security desktop on Azure, so this will get you actually extended support using Windows 7 as long as you're running it on Azure as part of this virtual desktop solution. They're also integrating their Office 365 virtualization, which was what they purchased from FS Logix for all the enhancements for the Office 365 and user experience. Now, one of the big things they wanted to tout around the Microsoft side and working with Citrix is the improvements with Office 365 with SD-WAN. So what they've been able to do is really make it to where if you put SD-WAN in and you're using Office 365, you're going to get better connectivity to the Office front doors, which are different than, let's say, Azure Data Center. So again, these are all different locations that Microsoft has around the world, and they're working with Citrix to make sure if you put in the SD-WAN, that it's going to help optimize that experience for you with Office 365. One of the other things, they did their update on the optimization for Teams, which follows previously where they'd worked with Skype. So if you leverage the Teams inside your virtual desktop or as a published app, then you now have the optimizations for it along the HDX protocol as well now. And moving on, let's jump into Google. So Citrix and Google, their relationship has been growing and expanding year over year. This was probably the biggest year so far that new improvements, integrations, and the expansion of that relationship. So one of the keys is they've got MCS is now going to be supported on the Google Cloud Platform, GCP. You can leverage GCP instance templates as well as a golden image disk in order to make it all work. One nice thing about Google versus other cloud providers is you really can get a custom instance type. So if you have something specific you want to run based on metrics or performance, you can actually create that own instance for you and leverage that as your base template. Now it's currently just an early access, so it's only handling the server OSs of 2016 and 2019 for MCS. They're expecting desktops to come later. The GUI as well, coming when they get to general release. Right now, all administration for MCS is done via PowerShell. So again, it's kind of their phase one of that integration, but they are making progress. Citrix Workspace on GCP, think of kind of following the same lines of what Citrix managed desktops on Azure is, but you're going to have a little bit more control. This is essentially making sure you can run your virtual apps and desktops environment in Google Cloud. One thing they like to tout around this is a reduction of services when you actually use Google Cloud. So an example would be if I have a just infrastructure deployment with some Citrix Cloud connectors for their cloud service and the VDA is running, their managed services are saying you can take the footprint down from, let's say a 7-instance scenario to 3 services and 2 instances. So again, they're trying to now leverage your services in the Google Cloud Platform so you can really deploy Citrix and manage it better. The SD-WAN has also expanded. We're going to get into this a little bit more on the product updates, but SD-WAN and ADC both are now going to be supported on GCP, and you're going to see HA for the ADC or your old NetScaler coming by the end of the year in Q3, Q4. Now this is probably, all that's nice cloud, but my favorite part is going to be getting to the Git repository. But before that, kind of talking about their endpoint management integrations. So Google is becoming actually more widely used in some enterprises, especially around the education space as an endpoint. So what Citrix has done is taken their old Zen Mobile, their now endpoint management solution, and are allowing that to use for managing your Chrome Enterprise devices, as well as now they're working on a secure mail client for Chromebooks to make sure that that can be containerized. So again, that's one piece they're working together is that endpoints as well. Now the one thing you see with AWS, Azure, there's lots of templates, scripts out there that they've all created to really get you a base Citrix environment deployed quickly for proof of concept testing, etc. So what I like about this is now they've actually put this all up into Git repository, so you can actually access it. They've created new experimental branch for creating these scripts, and you actually want to use the master branch of any of the code that they have up there to deploy. Cool thing is, in about 30 to 40 minutes, it completely does a end-to-end deployment, including virtual application servers with built-in apps that they allow you to test with. So again, that's where their relationship's going. Pretty good. So now we're going to be moving into product updates. And for this, I'm going to be turning it over to John Villa to go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Troy. I can take control here. All right. Let's see. All right. So obviously we've talked about a lot about some newer announcements and cloud improvements, but we can't forget kind of the meat and potatoes of Citrix, which in this case is going to be virtual apps and desktops. There's a lot of improvements this year that over a couple sessions that discussed these. So what we're going to do is just kind of go over a couple bullet points that we want to kind of bring up that will affect essentially everyone going through the year. At the very beginning, app layering added support for G2 Hyper-V, essentially the new Hyper-V environments that we're starting to support. Having that additional app layering is going to be big. Office and Server 2019 certification for app and OS layers. This is going to be for your newer Office and Server 2019 deployments. If you have applications that are requiring to be on new 2019, this will be available there. Improved Linux support for graphics and authentication. This is going to be for your Linux operating systems. Linux is becoming a huge part in Citrix desktops and apps, and it's essentially nice to have that availability there and growing. User experience improvements. This is going to be a big one. DPI matching for Windows 10 is an example. In the past with Workspace app and also receiver, you have a lot of those DPI mismatches for those 4K monitors, so they've been really having improvements on that. As well as the build to lossless image quality. The idea there is they're always trying to improve that for our hospitals and banking applications. Citrix Optimizer 2.5. They say 10 plus enhancements, but it's quite a lot more than that. If you haven't used that in the past, this is going to be a great tool for your gold images or master images for either your PBS or MCS images. So I would really take a look at that. In the past, we've used other tools, but the Optimizer is really kind of helping out with the optimizations for new operating systems. Multi-stream ICA setup no longer requires changes to controllers. That's kind of a large one. It was some hoops before to get that working properly, and with the newer versions, that's not a requirement anymore. The current release, or CR version, improves CPU and bandwidth utilization when compared to the VDA LTSR 15. And that one is kind of a huge footprint. They say 25% over LTSR. Essentially, that's going to be your lower latency and also for your low latency or your high latency bandwidth restrictions. And finally, the adaptive throughput is now a part of HDX. In the past, you'd have to go through and enable that separately to run and for configuration, and they're going to be blending that into HDX. So it's going to be a much smoother transition for that going forward. Citrix Endpoint Management. Intune API integration for Citrix Endpoint Management for device compliance. The idea there is you can have a device and use a Intune API integration to manage your new devices such as Androids or iPhones. Mobile SSO to native SaaS applications in preview. The idea there is you have that new Workspace integration, and you can use your mobile single sign-on to your native Salesforce or Workday or Concur-based SaaS applications. Citrix Gateway Service support in preview. That's essentially, there's going to be supported across the Citrix Cloud. So that's currently in beta with a couple customers. Pre-configured policies and apps for new customers with 19.5 or higher. The idea there is that for when new customers come in, you'll have policy sets that are available and known through Citrix, and that can be pre-applied when you spin up the account. Knox platform for enterprise support for Android. That's a larger one. Knox has been around for several years. It's kind of the de facto encryption and malware platform for Android. So having that endpoint management integration with Knox is a huge improvement. Chrome OS devices for support guest sessions. This has kind of been a workaround for a while. When you have a Chrome OS, they can click on guest, whether it's a Chromebook or a Chromebox, and they can kind of get around some of those policies. And so the idea there is that now they're going to be able to support those guest sessions so you don't bypass, say, proxy filters or permissions based on the device. And a large one, which is going to be great for the iOS users, is a simplified iOS enrollment. They've got it down to 1 prompt instead of 2. It seems kind of silly that it's just one less, but it can really put a hamper on your new users when they're trying to click through and they start seeing multiple prompts. So they've got it down to 1, which is really nice. And last but not least, Citrix Hypervisor. Zen server is dead, and long live the hypervisor. Essentially, it's the same thing. They're just renaming in every a couple years. Citrix decides to change a bunch of names, and it's now Citrix Hypervisor. Hypervisor 8.0 was released April 2019. With that release, Server 2019 support is now enabled, so you can start deploying your Windows Server 2019 operating systems on that. Snapshot support for vGPU-enabled VMs. This has been a big one that has been a request for a long time, especially when you have grid or AMD-based solutions. At the time, you weren't able to snapshot vGPUs, and so this will be nice for your master images and your PBS images as well. UEFI boot support for Windows VM in preview mode. This is going to be specifically for your Windows 10 if you need a secure bootloader or if you have certain boot options that are required on the VM side. That's currently in preview. HCL updated to the latest hardware. Essentially, when Hypervisor in the past has been kind of slow for supporting new hardware, so they've released a new list of supported Hypervisor and essentially the technical specs as far as brands as well. And then disks bigger than 2 terabytes can now be attached. This has been kind of a request for the past couple of years. The idea here is that for larger storage devices, or particularly your FreeNAS scenarios and some smaller clients, the limit was 2 terabytes. And going forward now, you'll be able to go much higher than 2 terabytes. Now let me pass it back over to Troy, and then he's going to kind of continue.
Troy, are you on mute?
All right, thanks, John. And here we go. Yeah, the mutable mute button. So Citrix Cloud Services. So one thing we've been doing as we've been presenting through these is providing you also the session number. So if you look along the title, we're providing a session you can go back through and actually watch on demand through the Citrix Synergy Live website that we alluded to earlier for the keynote. Same stuff. So Cloud Services, the expansion. WEM, so the big one, this used to have to be an on-premise deployment, which then expands the on-premise footprint. Now they've actually created this cloud service available. So if you have this as part of your product, you can now look at leveraging the cloud service and what that would do for you. They've expanded some deployments over to government and APAC regions now. So your Citrix Cloud is growing as far as where they're supporting it. If you leverage multiple products within the cloud and want to keep your kind of look and feel for what your users are going to interface with, they now have introduced a unified branding across all their platforms. So if you have the mobile, the virtual apps and desktops, this is trying to make sure that workspace, that experience they have really follows the same look and feel you want. One of the things that's been a big one for trying to get users migrated or getting customers migrated over to the cloud has been support for their SSO and MFA options that are out there. So with single sign-on multi-factor authentication, they've now put integrations using Okta and Google Identity in a private technical preview. Hoping to see this really come out later this year to where now customers who are stuck having to leverage on-premise gateways just for this authentication requirement but have already gone to Citrix Cloud can now actually move all their services up to the cloud. A couple things around their browser service. So if you haven't seen this, their secure browser service helps you manage user browsing between websites and make sure that they're going to use a secure browser when they interact with your sites or if they go outside of your environment. So this is going to be a published browser service that Citrix manages, And one nice thing is when it launches now, it has an auto-select feature, so it'll actually launch the browser from the region or location that hosts the service that has the best performance for the user. So again, they're expanding that out. I've gotten some more traction on it for the secure browsing within desktops, etc. A couple of the integrations, as Matt alluded to, at the on-premise before for the cloud services. The license management used to be only a cloud option where you could release licenses via their management tool. So if you have users, et cetera, and you're managing who has how many licenses or employees would leave, you couldn't actually reclaim those licenses without going through a time period before. And now they've expanded that to where you have this administration capability go in and start releasing these licenses, so you're not having kind of a hold as users no longer leverage them. Another big piece in the cloud is the delegated administration, so doing more RBAC for your admins up there on who controls what, adding help desk type people, and also now being able to have auditing of all admin activities with their configuration logging that you can get. So again, this is an enhancement for the admin side. Very good. It's been something talked about, and now it puts it on par with everything you get to deploy on-prem there. Now, kind of the biggest one, since they do a zone deployment and they manage the database, they had to make sure that the virtual apps and desktop service is going to still be available for your on-prem users if they have a disconnection of the internet. So what they've done is enabled their local host cache, the LHC, within their cloud services now on the on-prem cloud connectors, so that if it goes down, you now can continue access to those VDAs. All right. Now, old ADC. So this is formerly NetScaler. One of the cool things about this is their bare metal edition. So what this is, I can have a server lying around or something that has the capabilities to run the NetScaler OS, and I can actually install the software on it. So this is going to be something that you use a subscription-based licensing for, and it's only supported with version 13. But again, it's them expanding from being a hardware kind of solution with the ADC. Now it's essentially a software platform that you can start leveraging across multiple type of hardware or VMs. Now, one of the nice things that you're looking at as well is AWS is now expanding to provide ADCs or NetScalers as a service. So what they're hoping to do, obviously, is provide some ease of use, make sure it's now a consumption-based model so that you can use it as you need it, turn it down when you don't. They're going to control firmware updates, all the hardware, everything behind the scenes for you. Now, this is something that we've been talking to customers about as well around our ADCs, is they do have a simplified pool licensing available now. They've created two different bundles. One of them allows you to create the pool licensing, which also gives you the subscription for the ADM. And then the other one includes the hardware as well. Now, that's what they call their zero capacity hardware, or ZCAP. And what that would be hardware you leverage that you can run your pooled licensing on. Now, the nice thing about pooled licensing is it allows you to not only run, instances on premise, but can also allow you to run them in cloud. So it's their attempt to allow you that hybridization of their licensing for your ADCs. I'm not going to get into too much of the native app delivery, but this is really an expansion for a lot of your containerization. So if you're leveraging that or taking a look at it, I definitely recommend looking at NetScaler as how it can help you out with that. They've added some additional security as well with bot management. What this really does is, as you get queries coming in, it can now see if anything's coming in is malicious or not. And they've expanded this with some cloud-native app APIs as well. So if you're front-ending cloud-based SaaS applications with a pass-through of the NetScaler, just for security reasons, you now can mitigate some of those security holes with API protection. SD-WAN. So this was a big to-do and talked about just about everywhere on everything in Citrix. So one of their big things they've been working on is a global Orchestrator service. So this is a new service they have that allows you to deploy SD-WAN appliances as a template. Sorry, sneezing. And once you have that all deployed, you can use the console there to make sure that everything's in sync as well. So the Orchestrator is a big tool, especially as they make their push into cloud support in both Azure and GCP for the SD-WAN appliance. Some of these specifics, again, if you use SD-WAN for optimizing your Office 365, is you get connections back to Azure, which they've benchmarked at anywhere from 2 to 5 times faster for your uploads into the Office 365 environment, as well as 3 to 10 times faster for downloads. Now, again, that's all subject based on how big your pipes are, but those are some of the metrics they've been seeing if you use SD-WAN along with Office 365. As well, it's going to be integrated for the Citrix managed desktops and their Windows Virtual Desktop service. Citrix has taken another step out into the service world and providing SD-WAN now as a service you can purchase. So what they're hoping to do is pretty much provide a just turnkey optimization for you. So you can now enable the SD-WAN capabilities without actually having to commit to the hardware or the appliances. You just use it as a cloud direct service. Now, they did expand, obviously, their on-prem with new hardware. A couple cool features with their smaller models is they've expanded support for the 4G LTE, as well as enabling broadband and DS1 failover. So again, these are really those small branch offices that you want to make sure you have redundant access capabilities for. They've also created a new data center version, and that's for bigger pipes, allowing for up to 16 plus gigabits of throughput with encryption. So it's really that data center side for all of the SD-WAN optimization. Now, when you get into, obviously, network appliances, you really want to talk about security as well. So one of the key features they've worked on is integration with Palo Alto. So now you can actually run a VM, a Palo Alto VM, on the SD-WAN appliance. What this allows you to do is provide the same level of protections that the Palo Alto firewall does on your SD-WAN appliance. So again, it's that integration they're going for with Palo Alto is expanding as well. And something to look at if you really have been trying to find a SD-WAN appliance or something in that product frame that you really want to use. There's other competitors out there, but Citrix has really been going all in, and it looks like Microsoft, Google have been working with them as well to really make this a good product. Next, I'm going to pass it on back over to Dave and let him cover the access control.
Great, thanks, Troy. So the Citrix Access Control Service, that's CEN 122. So they announced a bunch of cool things. So last year they talked about Citrix OTP or one-time passcode. So they've now announced general availability for that. And they've also written and delivered a Citrix Authenticator. It also works with your public authenticator still, like Google and Microsoft Authenticator. So whichever flavor you use, you can set up the built-in Citrix OTP to give you free two-factor authentication. So it's a great feature to add. There's an Okta, they've announced Okta integration as well for Citrix Cloud and Access Control Service. And I love that because I've been doing a bunch of Okta NetScaler integrations in the last several months. So I'm excited to see that expand to their Citrix Cloud offering so we can direct authenticate you for our Citrix Cloud customers. They also announced support for on-prem storefront and internally delivered applications, which is pretty cool. So you see a little diagram down there about with the Citrix Access Control in the middle with a Cloud Gateway Connector on-prem connecting to your on-prem apps. Browser security has been something Citrix has been leading with for a while with their secure browser service. So they've made a couple enhancements to that, and they've also expanded the footprint of where you can use browser security. So in the general service, they've expanded URL category and explicit filtering. So let's say you want to allow your users to look at their social media sites when they're at work and they need to take 5 away from what they're working on. Instead of doing that in the web browser on your network and on the local machine, you can, through the URL policies, redirect that to a secure browser service that's running somewhere else to allow them to do what they want, on their personal breaks and time at the office, but keep all that traffic off your network. So if they click on anything malicious, there's no way it can come back and infect your local machine. So that's pretty cool. They also support local browsers in addition to the one provided by the Workspace client, you can use any local browser, and that's just controlled through a proxy pack file. So they're kind of using old technology that's been around forever to route all the user traffic through the access control service. And the user experience would be the proxy pack is configured on their endpoint. They open the browser, they authenticate to the Workspace service, and then all the same policies get applied, whether that's or watermarking in the background and all your access control policies. So pretty cool that they can use whichever browser they desire. They've also announced a few security policies that includes a keylogger detector and an anti-screenshot. So if you have Snagit or any of the popular screenshot softwares installed on your machine, as soon as you invoke that take a screenshot feature, it'll actually gray out the browser that they're using so they can't snag that screenshot. So the only real way to get data off that machine is to take a picture of it with a phone or a camera, but then if you've enabled the watermark, it has the IP address and the username of the person who took that data. So they're really around, trying to strengthen the security of the data, never leaving the endpoint. And let me just click here. Okay. So some other cool features they've announced with the monitoring and analytics. So there's a lot of great new stuff here. So for the customers who are on the LTSR version, there are a lot of benefits to LTSR. It's the stable version. It's tried and true. But unfortunately, you're missing out on some of the features until they announce the next version of LTSR. So all the stuff is current release, and that includes a logon duration breakdown. So this is one of my favorite things because I'm all about the fastest login time as possible. And this tells you exactly how long every step of the login process took, including on the client side, that time it took to download the ICA file. And then all the way on the back end side, the time it took to process each individual group policy and every process that's running. So a lot of great breakdowns here to help you troubleshoot why is my logon slow. Basically, it's kind of the old problem that everybody's run into at some point with Citrix. So this really helps you get to the bottom of that. They also have introduced a new feature called probes. So they create a synthetic user that throughout the day is just logging onto the environment and doing application and desktop probes to see how is that performing, and then they can report an alert on that if the performance lags behind the thresholds that you've set. They've enhanced their configurable alerts. They finally have edge site parity with edge site 6.5 for network reconnects. So for those customers who ran edge site back in the day, that's good news, but it's still in a much nicer to use director format. They've linked Smart Scale and Director together so you can track the cost savings associated with scaling down your cloud-based servers in the evenings and kind of track the cost savings with that. For analytics, one cool thing that they've done, and Citrix has kind of been enhancing the features in the Citrix Cloud offering, but some new features have been a little slower to trickle down to the on-prem, so they're finally kind of getting parity between the on-prem and the cloud, and they have allowed you to plug your cloud infrastructure or your on-prem infrastructure up into the cloud by just logging on the director server and signing into Citrix Cloud, and then it creates a link to upload all the session data for session analytics in the Citrix Cloud offering. You also can then integrate with Splunk to send all the data to Splunk if you guys run that in your infrastructure. So here's some screenshots. So the session auto reconnect, so this tells you the session auto reconnect count. So that really can help you kind of identify network problems because the user might be masked from that, then maybe it freezes for a few seconds. But if it's happening over and over again, that tells you that there might be a network problem. So this can help you lead to resolution of that issue. Okay, so the next is the Citrix ATM. So some new features with that. So they have AI and machine learning analytics available and some role-based custom dashboards. They have some new graph integration as well. And a cool thing is the recommended troubleshooting flow with ATMs. So if it identifies an issue, it can kind of lead you down the path of how can I find where the problem is. So it gives you kind of a troubleshooting workflow, which is pretty cool. And okay, here are a couple of screenshots of that. So ADM, formerly known as NetScaler Mass, they just rebranded that as well with all the product rebrands. So that's Application Delivery Management, which manages your ADC appliances. So you get some cool features like checking your ADC health scores, checking your app health scores with this as well. They've been really big on the scoring thing. So back in the analytics, the previous slide, one thing I forgot to mention is they can give a user experience score. So they have all these scores built in, so they can really help guide you as to, you know, are these numbers a bad thing? Because there's so much data, it's hard to kind of consolidate that and figure out what's good and what's bad. So with the scoring that they've done across all their analytics platforms, it really helps you drill down and figure out, you know, what are the things that are critical that I need to look at to improve the user experience. So now we're going to go to the Expo Hall. So we all had a chance to walk around the Expo Hall and see some of the cool booths there. So I'm going to talk about one of my favorite love-hate problems, which is printing. So I visited some 3 printer vendors in the Expo Hall: PrinterLogic, Triceret, and LRS. So if anybody remembers, Triceret's original product was screwdrivers, so I put this funny little screwdriver there for everybody. So PrinterLogic is a IP-based printing inside the session or the endpoint. So what does that mean? That means that instead of having a print server in between the endpoint or the session and the output device, the printer, it manages creating direct IP printers when you log on, whether that's logging on to an endpoint, and that can be an iGel thin client endpoint, or that could be your session. So it manages this direct IP printing to that endpoint device. They also have secure print. All 3 of these vendors have secure print options where you just print to universal print queue, go to the printer, tap your badge, or type in your PIN, and then out spits your print job. Triceret can use a native or universal driver, and they also have a connection manager for virtual apps and desktops for a logout and reconnect. And all 3 of these tools have that feature, and they just do it a little bit differently. Triceret uses its own print server in the middle. LRS also does the same, and so that's been popular among our healthcare clients because they have back-end printing integration with several popular electronic health record systems. So they can provide both tap to print and then also printer connection manager. So as you're roaming around from station A to station B, it has a database of the printers that are associated with that for the things that would come out automatically. So I'm going to hand it over to John for the rest of the tour here.
Thank you, Dave. So when I was walking around the Expo Hall, I'm a big geek as far as it comes to monitoring Citrix. You know, depending on user sessions, depending on, you know, logon times, processes. So I was really kind of gravitated towards some of the monitoring solutions that was in the Expo Hall, and I'm going to cover 2 of them today, as quickly as I can here. ControlUp, if everyone's ever used that or have had discussions with them, it's an amazing agent-based monitoring tool for Citrix and Windows in general on top of your hypervisors. A couple items that are new in version 7.4 is their latest and greatest. It was released about 2 weeks before Synergy started up. What's new in this version, I've taken 4 key points that I just want to discuss. The first of which is going to be your automated actions. So what this is you can create actions based on scripts, which I'll kind of talk about on another slide. But the idea here is if you have free space that's dwindling on a VDA, you can actually set up an automated action now to go detect whether or not that storage space has shrunk, and then it'll automatically fire off a script to go and clean out the disk space in a bunch of different places, depending on, you can set up the locations that you want, or there's going to be some community items, which I'll discuss at a later point. But the idea here is that with the automated actions, you can have all sorts of different things. You can even have it where it stops processes. It can give different priorities to different processes, all in real time on the fly as it's reading from the VDA and the operating system itself. Let's see here. All right, enhanced user experience monitoring. So this is probably one of their biggest key items this year with 7.4. What these items are is in real time, it's monitoring the user impact on your VDAs, whether it's Zen apps and desktop. Specifically, what this is what they're really prideful on is, as of Windows 10 1809 and Windows Server 2019, Microsoft has finally added in new RDS and RDSH host counters. And while that doesn't sound like too exciting, in a very shrunken down process is you can now see in real time the user input delay when they're accessing an application or launching an application or even viewing a PDF or a website. If they are seeing slow input either on their mouse or the delay back to their screen, we can now see that in real time instead of having to wait for the users to make a complaint with the help desk. Other tools that have kind of done this is on the Citrix side is the connection quality indicator, but you'd have to wait for it to report back to the end user. Where this, you can actually see it in real time and kick off actions, which was in the prior slide, to actually maybe bump up the process priority on their VDA, or kill background processes so that process that needs that CPU can get accelerated. Now, this does only support Windows 10 1809 and Server 2019. However, Windows does have the RDS and RDSH counter pack in preview. We're expecting that to show up later this year. Let's see. It's going to switch for me. Again, as we talked earlier, script action enhancements. They've changed it from script-based actions to script actions. Again, just another name change. The key item here is that they have a bunch of built-in scripts that they've actually created as an organization. However, the big change this year is that they are now accepting community scripts. And the community scripts have to be rated, validated, and posted. And there's a lot of big-name scripters across the board have been submitting scripts to this. So for your prior example is the free disk space. There's 3 or 4 different scripts out there that you can run that will go through and clean up the system drive, the page file or temporary folders to get your disk space back. And have all been validated. If the script breaks something or if someone reports that it's bad, it gets removed from the community scripts until it's been validated again or revalidated again. Other items where we've had in the past where if you're using a Zen desktop and the Citrix receiver becomes corrupted, you can actually run a script on your machines to reset the Citrix client and pull down the new policies from GPO. And finally, virtual expert enhancements. They've had this before, but they've really kind of stepped up the usability on this going forward. The idea here is when you're actively monitoring either a user session or a Windows host, you can actually move your mouse over a high priority item, and it will actually give you troubleshooting steps that it feels that it would be a suggestion for fixing the issue. And what you'll find is a lot of these now point to the new script actions or the community script actions. There's a lot of items there that there'll be a little cloud icon that it says this is a community script, and you can actually click on it. It'll download it in real time, show you what it's going to do, and run the process as well. So it's definitely an improved look and feel. The granular customization options are huge. It's a lot easier to get to what you're looking for when you need it and get to it quickly. And then another favorite in the VDA space is EG Innovations. Now, they've had in the past an agent-based solution, primarily relying on Java, and it can get a little clunky sometimes, but once your EG's fully set up, you can get a lot of information. But they're trying to keep up with the times. So the idea here is they've now released a full SaaS-based solution. And I've noted in here that it's as simple as 1, 2, 3 because I've gone through, and I'll personally admit I haven't done EG Innovations in a year or so. And I could go in and set up a free account and download and install the user agents. Using a singular agent, it will discover your VDAs and deploy it for you. And within about 20 minutes, I get real-time data that's available up in their cloud management tool. The nice part is that you can download the agent on any Windows-based machine. You can point it at your Active Directory or your Citrix delivery controller. It'll find the VDAs and install it for you and automatically start discovering. The downside to this yet is that it is currently only available for Zen app or your virtual apps. They do say virtual desktop support is coming soon. However, they haven't given a specific date, mostly because they're relying on the RDSH hosts and their agent capability. And at this point, I'll hand it back over to Dan to finish out the rest of the presentation here.
All right, I think I have control. Everything good? There we go. Oh, I did it one too fast. Okay, thanks everybody for taking the time. I know we're getting close to the end here, so bear with me as I kind of finish up for us. I just want to jump in and talk a little bit about iGel and LG kind of stuff that we found some of the expo halls and some of the messages that they had. Obviously, a UDP Pocket and the Universal Management System updates that are currently out there right now. The new iGel UD2 and UD7 devices that were just released, as well as next generation OS for the cloud workspace, iGel OS 11. And really, that was probably one of the biggest messages you'll see on the next slide from iGel was really around, going from a hardware company, a thin client company, to becoming really hardware agnostic and really focusing on next generation OS. So an Edge OS, really looking at your endpoints, whether they're an iGel endpoint or just about any endpoint out there, with either their iGel software being able to put on it or a UDP Pocket to be able to integrate with that. And you can see with some of the relationships that have actually happened, you can see the LG relationship that's come out where I really offered additional endpoint solutions to really give that the options to the clients now too. You have an all-in-one device. You have a Chromebook-like device as well too. The all-in-ones are both 24 and a 38 inch screens there. So really nice products. We actually got to see them on the floor. The Chromebook style laptop that they have there from LG, really nice product. You can feel just the solidness of the product and how it can actually kind of manage in a mobile workforce as well too. So both those products are great. You can really see that iGel's focusing on that integration with the partners and vendors. Their next generation OS, right? So this is really the message. I love that when the M7 party that happened, our customer client party, I got up on stage. Agile talked about hey, we're really moving away from that hardware company, and we really want you to focus on that we're the next gen operating system for your cloud workspaces. LG got up right after that and said, hey, when you think iGel, think LG, right? And that's really that mentality of the partnerships that they've really worked hard for. You can see it obviously with those two in general, but you can see as we get through some of their relationships that they're really looking for, again, to become agnostic for the hardware as well as your cloud providers as well too. So they're looking to make this ecosystems, the end user compute ecosystem, open and available for you to really have the options and choices as you make roadmap changes and roadmap decisions going forward. And their pride really is this ecosystem, right? They've kind of built. Obviously, it continues to build. You can see the relationships that they have. I'm sure you enjoy most of these companies or know most of these companies out there. So they're really pushing that integration in the EUC community, and their devices really, again, trying to make it so that your roadmaps are wide open. You're able to make the choices you need that are best for your business, and kind of moving forward with that. So that was kind of a wrap up. iGel, LG, like I said, some really good products out there. There's actually 4 devices that they have, talking from just standard, the laptops as well as thin client devices. I think this next slide, I may have it. Okay. So I wanted to talk real quick after iGel and LG about user groups. So both Los Angeles and San Diego has a user group. Right now, we both have sessions coming up next week on the 19th and 20th. I would really appreciate if you guys kind of got in there and started looked at the Citrix My User Groups. Look at the portal. Make sure you sign up for your local community, and it's okay to sign up from outside of your local community. Potentially, if you're in LA, please even sign up for San Diego. You don't have to come to the events all the time, but There is good knowledge that comes out of there. There's a good networking space as well too. What's a really neat feature what Citrix has done for us in the user groups is they've offered these free workshops. So now prior to, and this is our first kind of kickoff with this, but prior to our meetings, we're going to offer a free hands-on workshop. So you'll see, about 3.5 hours is the commitment for the workshop. And then obviously this UGC meeting goes after that. Absolutely, you're open to attend one or both. But this is really, an opportunity to get, yourself as well as your team members free training. It's condensed. It's actually run by Citrix SEs. It's run in a Citrix lab workspace. So it's just kind of bring your laptop, bring your own device, connect into the lab, get up to speed on Citrix Workspace in 3.5 hours, and then be able to sit there and network, with peers in the area, potentially talk about that, or even, normally we have product and vendor updates, kind of like we did here a little bit from these vendors as well too. So both the user groups are being sponsored by Liquidware Labs. So we'll talk about their product updates during those user groups as well. Like I said, if you can't attend this one, that's fine. Please, go ahead and sign up in those user groups, and then you'll see future, training options for free and future user groups in your area as well too. So by all means, jump on, give feedback. You're looking for something in your local area, please let us know so that we can, we can make sure that we understand people's needs. So that's San Diego, LA, and then, obviously, we want to thank everybody for joining this call. We are a platinum partner, Citrix. We have been for a long time. We've won Partner of the Year 5 out of the last 10 years. We're definitely in a space where we have great relationships with all these vendors that you've seen on site as well too. So we want to make sure that, we generally have access to, a lot of the stuff prior to GA. So if you need any help with any implementation, configurations of the products, we'd absolutely be happy to help you with that. Please reach out to your sales representative if you want to get any more information about some of the stuff that we've done here today. We really appreciate you joining the call. I know it's hard to take an hour out of your day. We'll give you a couple minutes back here as we wrap up. I really appreciate you guys jumping on, and we look forward to working with you and hearing from you in the future. Troy, I'll give it back to you.
Oh, perfect, Dan. That's good. Appreciate everyone for joining. Thank you. We look forward to getting the content out of this. And please, if you guys have any questions, please reach out to your team. And look forward to working you all later. That should do it. If you have any questions, let's see, do we have anything in the Q&A? Nope, don't see anything in the Q&A. So I guess we're all clear. All right, lunchtime, folks. Have yourselves a good one, and we'll catch you next time.